Reverend Dr. Raymont is an ordained Centers for Spiritual Living minister serving the Center for Spiritual Living Greater Baltimore community as our spiritual director. As a lifelong learner with a passion for self development, personal transformation, transmutation, and transfiguration, he has frequently been referred to as a Renaissance man and visionary New Thought leader who makes complex metaphysical concepts readily understandable and applicable. Take a breath. His mission is to live, move, and be an active member of society who serves to educate, elucidate, and emancipate people and communities to awaken and empower themselves. ACTIVE is an acronym that stands for authentic, compassionate, transparent, inspired, vibrant, empowered. And he continues to live his bliss as a teacher, minister, author, workshop, and seminar facilitator, visual artist, ASL interpreter, and ASL performing artist, mentor, father, grandfather, and more. I give you Reverend Dr. Ray.
You know, there are days when you recognize just how silly Tracy can be, and that you should hear her now. Whoop, whoop. And then there are days when, anyhow, so thank you, Tracy. I'm beyond words. So today, yes, we are continuing our conversation about this idea of being in relationship. And if you have been present and paying attention to any of the music, the pre-service meditation, the in-service spiritual practice, like if you've been paying attention to any of this, then you caught the theme of what it means to be in relationship with nature itself. So today, that's specifically what we are recognizing and talking about, that there is this aspect of nature that includes the rocks, soil, plants, all of the waters, rivers, lakes, streams, all of the animals, all of the elements on the periodic chart, like all of it, all of it, all of nature is God in expression. And that if we see nature as something being out there, separate from, then we begin to treat it differently. We don't see it as sacred. We don't treat it as sacred. And how we treat it on a deeper level is how we understand, respect, or disrespect and treat ourselves. So today we are diving into what it means to be in an intimate relationship with all of creation, to dive deeper consciously in a more loving, divine, and empowered manner. Breathe. Ready? So, what would you say, Tracy? She said yes. So, where is God? You know, if someone, were to ask you, where is God? Well, one of the things that you may have caught that Frank said, there is nowhere that God is not. So where is God? Everywhere. There's this phrase, this passage from the Bible that says, be still. Be still. Stop rummaging. Stop fidgeting. Just be still. And know that I am God. And what does that have to do with specifically this idea of nature? Well, The transcendentalist, their connection to God was through the great outdoors. So for them, God, G-O-D, was the great outdoors. All of nature was the temple, the church, the mosque, all of nature, that there was nowhere in the forest, the mountains, there was nowhere that was not holy ground. One of the transcendentalists, or a person who was, involved in the transcendentalist movement, Frank Lloyd Wright, which you may have known this guy from his architecture, said, "I believe in God, only I spell it Nature. I spell God nature." That's one reason why his architecture is deeply, like, if you look at it, you can see the natural influence, the way he built it in and around and through, and nature was a part. It's not just, there's a building in the middle of the city, there's a building. It's like, here's a building that is being birthed out of this mountainside, where the water runs through it. Like, all of it was intimately interconnected. He didn't see it as something separate. And yet, how many of us, not only do we see it as separate, we see ourselves as separate? Breathe. Because in the book, Pray and Prosper, we are invited to recognize that all of our memories of the past will be healed. Pause on that. Take that in. Doesn't say some of our memories. All of our memories of the past will be healed if our communion with nature and with the Spirit becomes complete. Now, think about this for a second. Healed if communion with nature and with Spirit becomes complete. So let's think about this for a second, because normally when we think of communion, we think in terms of only one general idea, which is fine. However, this idea, the expansiveness of this idea, which we find in Luke, and he took the bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to them and said, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." But what if we also have the opportunity to say, "This is my body, and I do this to remember my divinity, to remember that I am that which Spirit is. This is the blood of, this is the life flow, this is the energy of the divine, of the universe, and I do this to reconnect, to remember, to come back to oneness of myself as the infinite power and presence of all that is." That communion need not be something we go to a specific building to receive, but that communion with and as Spirit itself is ever present wherever we are, right here and right now. Because everything that exists is a manifestation of the divine mind. Say it again. Everything that exists, everything that exists is a manifestation of the divine mind. The seen, the unseen, the yet to be seen, all of it. The infinite void from which all things come, all things that have come from it, and all things that return to it, all of it is a manifestation of the divine mind. It is merely expressed by the form. This divine mind expresses in form. The manifest universe, then, is the body of God. The manifest universe, then, is the body of God. This desk, this webcam, the body of God. this timer that Tracy demands that I use to keep me on track, the cell phone, the body of God. If it is manifest, the stars manifest, the desert manifest, the beach manifest, the cloak manifest, the body of God. If it's the body of God and I use it as my remembering communion, this is my body. Do this in remembrance. Do this to remember that you and I are one, that there is only one. Do this to remember, to reconnect, to be whole. Breathe. Anybody know Japanese? Shinrin yoku. What's it mean? Tracy, what's it mean? I'm not even listening to you right now. Forest bathing. And know this, know this doesn't mean going out into the woods with a pot of water and some soap and scrubbing yourself in front of the bears. Yogi don't care about none of that. So no, it's not about that. It's about going into nature and simply being in the cathedral of the divine and feeling the energy wash over you, feeling the energy heal you. And that's it. It is simply being present, being in communion, in communication, in community with the divine, in nature. Now, the Japanese folks remind you that if you are a beginner to this practice, when you do this, leave all electronics, leave it behind. You don't need to check your email while you are forest bathing. Remember that it's not a hike, because there's a goal. Like, I'm hiking 10 miles. It's a mission. Forest bathing is simply to be present. If you go with somebody, so how was your weekend? Yeah, so I went to Florida last week and you came back with COVID. See, I had no intention on bringing souvenirs back, but hey, somehow it got in the suitcase. It's not a conversation. It's about being present with the divine, being present with the divine, being present as the divine. And that's it. Now, we may say, but okay, I got that, but so what? Like, what are the benefits? Well, there are many benefits to being present. Your creativity is sparked, stress is reduced, anxiety is reduced, concentration and memory are increased and improved. Your heart rate becomes calm, peaceful, and lower. All of these benefits simply from being present, not just being present to trees and grass and shrubs, but being present to the divine, with the divine, as the divine, being in ecstatic connection with the oneness that is the truth of your being. That's what provides this, which is precisely why you don't really need, like, you may not live near a forest. You may not live near a state park where you can have be readily accessible to the trees and the mountains and the rivers. Not everybody has a cabin in the woods like Sue. And you don't have to, because everyone has some form of connection to nature. Sunlight, starlight, moonlight. Simply opening your window and feeling the breeze. Even if it's on that day, what was it, yesterday, Tracy, where it was 98,000 degrees outside, and that hot whoosh of air whoosh, rushes in and burns the 12 o'clock shadow off my face. Even that air, that's nature. Watching the rabbits hop across the lawn or the bees buzz from tree to tree. How are you able to connect? Gardening, barefoot in the grass, finding ways to connect to nature. Breathe. The central principle of religious science is this immanence of God. All phenomena appearing in the natural world are manifestations of the spiritual world, which is the world of causation. All phenomena has back of it some spiritual connection, nothing just simply out of, like, there's spirit is all there is. So there's something back of it. So the moment we recognize it, the moment we can connect with it, the moment we are present, then we are connecting to that which is back of it, which ultimately, God, the universe, source, spirit. Now, that does not mean that we are looking at cause as in to say, so what is the cause of that forest fire? That must be God. Or what is the cause of Ray having COVID? That must be God. I'm not talking about cause and effect in terms of that, because that's right. That could lead us down that road of what's it called? Spiritual bypass, metaphysical malpractice. So we're not talking about that. It's a different conversation. We are talking about back of everything. There's one cause, and that's God, spirit, source, because there cannot be a physical cause and a spiritual cause, because then that means there are two separate powers. There's only one. So we are called to be in recognition of this one power and one presence. Breathe. So there are many religious books, many sacred texts the world over. And many people, for lack of a better word, argue about whose book is the right book, which text is the truth. Why? Because ultimately, if we recognize and we understand that the language of nature connects us all. See, the moment we go into this other thing, then we fight, we argue, we go to war. But if we recognize that the task that we face today is to understand the language of nature, then we recognize that that language is spoken in all of these books. No matter where they were written, who wrote them, etc., the language of nature shows up in them. Why? Because ultimately the language of God, the language of the universe, is beyond individual letters and characters, because the individual letters and characters on the parchment and the paper broken down are the very molecules and atoms that are nature itself. So we read the words and we see the spaces between the words, and we recognize the language of eternity is in all of these books. It is these books. It is the pages of the books, the very fibers of the paper. It's all of it. So our invitation is to recognize the language of nature, and not just trees and stars and sky, but the nature of love, the nature of friendship, the nature of community, the nature of family. Because when we go to the very nature of, we can't help but to find spirit, find God. Yes, breathe. Reverend Ray says, if we believe God is only found in a building, now that building could be a church, a mosque, doesn't matter what the building is, or a certain book, like we just said. If we believe God is only found there and not found in the mountains or the forests or the beaches, the stars, the animal kingdom, the earth, and all of life itself, then we will never find God in or as one another or in or as ourselves. That which God is will continue to elude us and escape us simply because we believe it to be a limited and smaller power and smaller presence and limited presence than it truly is. Because we are trying to quantify it to a particular book. We are trying to quantify it to a particular building, rather than it's all of it and more. And so for as long as we try to shrink it, it will forever elude us. But the moment we let go of that and recognize that it's everything and everywhere, then we realize then that includes right where we are sitting. Wherever we are, God is. Wherever we go, God is going all the time. As Carl Sagan said, the cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the universe to know itself. Check that out. We are a way for creation to know itself, to see its own beauty. Breathe. Simply stand in the amazing grandeur of that. You are a way for the universe to recognize its own voice, its own imagination, its own creative possibilities. As Neil deGrasse Tyson says, we are all connected to each other biologically, to the earth chemically, to the rest of the universe atomically. We cannot get around that connection. We are connected, whether you want to be or not. We are connected to everything and everyone, always, always have been, we are right now, and forever will be, biologically, chemically, atomically, and what we talk about in our teaching, spiritually, always. Every man is a divinity in disguise, a god playing the fool, according to Emerson, transcendentalist. Now, the playing the fool part, because I know some of y'all got the hairs on the back of your neck standing up. The idea is the person who does not recognize, does not know. They're fumbling around thinking that they are simply a sinner. They are thinking that they are worthless, that they do not deserve. That's what he is referring to. That you are royalty, but you think you're a pauper. You are powerful, yet you believe that you are weak. Every single human being is divinity. Are we ready to accept it? Are we ready to live that? As Ram Dass says, treat everyone that you meet like God in drag. In other words, God with a disguise, per se. God behind the face of, God behind the behavior of, and yet nonetheless, still God. Still God. Still God. Yep, them too. Still God. Yep, yes, yep, all, yep, everybody. Say, yeah, them too. Yes, right? Them to all of them. Everyone, everything, God. What is that? What does that move within us to change, to recognize, to realize? Neil also goes on to say, we are part of this universe. We are in this universe. But perhaps more important than both of these facts is that the universe is in us. We are part of God. We are in this thing called God. But perhaps more important than both of those facts is that God is in us. And not just in us, but God is showing up as us because God is all there is. We are all connected. As above, we are all connected. So below. Doesn't matter where it is. Connection is still there. Beneath the earth, on the earth, above the earth, around the earth itself. All connected. See, you don't see gravity, right? You don't see it, but you see the effect of it, which means gravity is connected, or you are connected to the earth. You are connected by this gravitational field. You don't see it, but you feel the effect of it. You don't see air, but you're connected to it, connected by it. We're always connected, as above, so below. Everything in the universe is within you, around you, above you, below you, beside you. Ask all from yourself, not from your egoic self alone, but from your higher self, your truer self, your most authentic self. Ask of yourself. As Ernest Holmes said, the only God you're truly going to know, recognize, and have an intimate connection with is the one that you embody. Because for as long as you keep looking for it somewhere, I can't find, But the moment you embody and recognize that wherever you are, God is, wherever you go, God is, whoever you are talking to, God is, whoever you are sitting with, God is. Everything, everyone, everywhere. Then it changes the energy of how you live, move, and have your beingness. Reverend Ray goes on to say, simply the ways and the depth of how we communicate, collaborate, and cooperate with nature is precisely how and to what depths we communicate, collaborate, and cooperate with and as spirit. Pause and take that in. How do we communicate, collaborate, and co-op? How do we communicate with nature? How do we collaborate with nature? How do we cooperate with nature? Because that is an indicating fact of how we are communicating with and as spirit, collaborating with and as spirit, cooperating with and as spirit. Because nothing happens separate from. So we are always given this great opportunity to see, to witness the evidence, the fruits of our labors. What we have sown, well, what are you harvesting? What is being reaped? What do you have to show for it? There's always karma, cause and effect. Look at the effect and you'll find, well, what's birthing this? What is the mental equivalent that is bringing this into fruition? How are we communicating with nature? How am I communicating with other people? How am I collaborating with other people? How am I cooperating with other people? It's an indicator of how I communicate, collaborate, and cooperate with God, both in, through, and as myself, in, through, and as other. It's all one and the same. I can't claim to be connected with the God of my own understanding and then be mad at Tracy and fuss and cuss about her and not see her as God. I can feel the anger about her behavior. I can see something that happened on the news and be angry about someone's behavior. But if I refuse to still see that individual as God, even with the behavior, the toxic behavior, they're still God. But if I refuse to see that, then I am denying myself the ability to communicate, to collaborate, and to cooperate with spirit in, through, and as my own life. Once again, because I am trying to quantify and relegate God relegate nature to a particular group of people, a single behavior, one paragraph in a book, etc., rather than it's all of it, it's everywhere, all the time. Breathe. This week's practice. 1, ask yourself, in what ways do I commune with God? In what ways do I communicate as God? In what ways do I engage and embody community with and as God? Journal about it, meditate about it, contemplate it. Number 2, what am I being invited to practice in order to strengthen this relationship that I have with God, as God, and to God as all else? What am I being invited to practice to strengthen that relationship? 3, have a conversation with 3 people about your greatest challenge connecting with God as the great outdoors. Tracy don't like dirt. Tracy don't like mud. Tracy don't like the rain. Tracy don't like bugs. Tracy, have a ooh, breathe, Ray, breathe. I'm just seeing Tracy. I'm gonna show y'all a picture one of these days. It's Tracy hiding from a bee and she's doing this. It's hilarious. Anyhow, have a conversation. Breathe. Have a conversation with 3 people about your greatest challenge, connecting with God as the great outdoors, meaning nature. Are you someone who really doesn't like being outdoors? You don't like, I could care less about the stars, and I'm a city boy. Like I'm in the city, street lights and the honking the horns, and I hear you. But is there something that you are denying yourself that you don't even realize you're denying yourself by only being in the concrete jungle? And then what does this quote mean to you? God sleeps in the rock, dreams in the plant, stirs in the animal, and awakens in man. Breathe. This week's affirmation declaration, I will say it first. And if you, sorry, I forgot. There's one more. Go find this link. And once again, always, if you want copies of the PowerPoint, just email Tracy and I, and we'll make sure you get it. I want you to go to this article in Maryland Today and read this article about forest bathing as a method of relieving stress. And if you're available, join in the Thursday night discussion and talk about what did this article say to you. And now, our affirmation declaration. I will say it first, and if you feel in alignment with it, say it with me on the second go round. Where I am, God is. Where I go, God is. Simple as that. Where I am, God is. Where I go, God is. And breathe. So we breathe and recognize this divine power and presence right here, right now. Avunde bashmaya nitkadish shamuchtete malkutach. Nechwe tibianach ikaneth di bashmaya af ba'archa. Havlan lachma da sunkenan yaumana washboklan haubein wachtehein ikanadaf chanan schwachen al hayabein wela tachlen lenesuna ele patzan menbisha mitu de lache malkuta wachela watishbukta la alam almin amen. We breathe, recognizing the infinite is all there is. It is right where you are, right where I am, forever and ever. And it is forever and ever acting upon itself, the infinite nature, the infinite love, the infinite spirit, always closer than this very breath, closer than these words, closer than these thoughts. I am that I am. And what is true for me is true for you as well. I am that. And now we go out in the world and we demonstrate this awareness, knowing that that which it is, I am. Breathe. The law says yes. It is answered prayer. And so it is. Namaste, blessings, much love.